information contained in this video and/or audio is provided as is for educational and informational purposes only and should not serve as the basis for any trading or investing decisions. Little Grapevine makes no representations and disclaims all express, implied, and statutory warranties of any kind to any viewer or other third party. Neither Little Grapevine nor any of its affiliates makes any endorsement of any particular company, security, product, or financial strategy, and nothing contained in this video and/or audio should be construed as investment advice. Please be aware that we and participants viewing presentations and/or live webcasts and engaging in Q&As may own, buy, or sell shares of featured companies. Investors should undertake their own due diligence and carefully evaluate companies before investing. Please see safe harbor statements of companies participating in Little Grapevine events by viewing their videos and slide presentations at littlegrapevine.com.
Hello, everybody. This is Maj Swadan from GeoInvesting. I am here on behalf of Little Grapevine to host a fireside chat with Linda Tharby. She's the recently appointed CEO to KRMD, KORU Medical. KORU Medical trades in the NASDAQ under the symbol KRMD and is a medical device company with a home infusion therapy platform. And we're really here to talk to Linda about and learn more about her background, what she saw with the company that she thought that she liked, maybe discuss some of the issues she saw with the company, how she's going to fix them, and some of the opportunities she sees. We want to talk about the competitive landscape, Linda, any unforeseen surprises you saw when you joined the company, and things you think you can fix, and some of the risks to the growth story. I also have Kim Abril here. Is that right, yes. Abril?
Kim, yes, Q-U-I-M. That's correct.
Correct, Kim Abril. And I met Kim through GeoInvesting, and I really respected his investment analysis, his strategies. We connected really well. He's been following KRMD, and I wanted him to be part of this interview because he's done a lot of background history on the company. So we'll include him in the conversation. And maybe Kim, you can talk about a little bit about your company. Give us your bio profile, where people can find you.
Well, yes, I'm located here in Spain, in Barcelona. I invite you all because here the weather is amazing. So especially in the summer. So this is Spain. So I'm managing a small fund, but I can invest in really small companies. This is the reason because is it interesting to invest in a small company? And I'm researching companies around the world, but with focus in the US, Canada, and Australia. And I like to search for companies with a huge TAM, the total addressable market, with some kind of recurring income, with no debt, and try to talk with all the management like Linda. And I'm focused with companies that they give me KPIs, or I can have access to some KPIs to try to model the growth in revenue. No? Because I don't like to believe that the management is saying the revenues are going to go 10%. I want to say why. No? So what are the key performance indicators that is driving your company, your business model? So, and I think KORU Medical or KRMD can go inside of this pocket. So this is because I like to focus and continue to be a shareholder of your company, right?
And of course, all of you out there, you can, if you have a question, you can always put a question in chat or raise your hand and ask a question. As a reminder, this is going to be recorded. I want to read a disclaimer here for everybody, so you understand this information contained in this presentation is provided for educational and information purposes only, and should not serve as the basis of any trading or investment decisions. Neither Little Grapevine nor any of its affiliates make any endorsements of any particular company, security, product, or financial strategy, and nothing contained in this video should be construed as investment advice. Also be aware that anybody on this call may own a stock, and don't construe any of that as investment advice. And I encourage you to read all the terms and conditions at littlegrapevine.com. And by watching this video and participating, you agree to the terms and conditions. So thank you. So Linda, take it away. Tell us about you. I'd like to start maybe about before you came to KORU. Tell us about your history and what makes you a great candidate for leading the charge here and for KRMD moving forward.
Great. So thanks, Maj, for hosting this morning. I'm looking forward to our discussion and to obviously the questions and the live interaction. So where to begin? Well, I had a 25-year career with BD or Becton Dickinson, and there's so many parallels that this role was really the perfect fit for me. So About 21 of those 25 years with BD I spent running global businesses, and the ones that are most applicable to KORU, being a drug delivery in the home, were two. First, I was VP and GM for the Americas, so ran the innovation pipeline as well as all of our commercial and manufacturing activities for our pharmaceutical business in the Americas for BD. That business was a business that dealt with all pharma companies, their drug delivery requirements, whether that be in a pre-filled syringe, an auto injector, or a pre-filled pump that we supply to the marketplace. So that was certainly applicable. And then second was I spent 5 years as the global president of our diabetes business. And again, if you think about what we do here at KORU, which is administer drug therapy in the home for patients, running our diabetes business globally, which is the largest home injection patient in the world, is the diabetes patient. My background is very relevant here. Obviously, a lot of time running innovation profiles, innovation pipelines, mergers and acquisitions, international, and I, in December of 2020, the timing, December of 2020, the timing couldn't have been more perfect. I left BD and got a call from KORU in late January, and I was looking for to be a CEO. I did not get the gig at BD. Tom Poland did. Good for him. And I was looking to do that, and this company happened to be close to home, about 45 minutes from home, in a large growing space as the market leader in a space that, if you look at home delivery of drug therapy in the home, all of the trends point this way. So it was kind of, as I like to say, a match made in heaven relative to my background and what KORU needed relative to somebody who could come in and really innovate and build the bonds with the pharmaceutical industry. So that's a little about my background and why this company made sense to me.
Thanks, Linda. So when you were analyzing this opportunity potentially to take or not take it, and when you were looking at not only the opportunity, but maybe some of the risks. So you must have seen some things with KRMD that you thought maybe weren't, how should I phrase this? Maybe weren't being run as optimal as you thought they should. I'm not saying, KRMD did a great job over the last few years of growing the company and getting to where they were, gaining market share. The stock went from, I think, 8 cents to as high as like 12, 13 bucks during COVID. Mm-hmm. Pulled back in the $3, $4 area. And I think that's when you came in. There was some misses on their financial numbers. I guess expectations weren't met. So maybe you can come around like what you saw at KRMD, where it may be that, hey, they had something interesting, but some fine tuning maybe was needed. I'm curious where you saw those opportunities.
Yeah, so first, let me just get back to our fundamental value proposition. If we look at drug delivery, you deliver drugs in anywhere from 0.2 ml of drug all the way up to 300 mLs of drug. KORU's sweet spot is in large volume home infusion. So anything above 10 ml, if you look at that market space, there are very few players. There's ourselves and primarily one other player in that space if you're looking to go subcutaneous. And if you look at who leads in terms of safety and efficacy and the number of home infusions, 1.5 million home infusions per year, KORU is that company. And then you look at our relationship with the channel. So specialty pharmacy is the channel that starts the patient on therapy. And we literally have thousands of trained caregivers. So I looked at a space of home infusion, which today penetration levels are certainly under 20%. You look at all of the trend data of where the overall home infusion market is going, and that was all very, very positive to me. When I was doing my diligence on the company and having been in drug delivery for quite some time and knowing what was on the forefront of greatest technologies, BD is a market leader in drug delivery, so certainly knew in small volume drug delivery where the trends were headed, right? Pre-fill, electromechanical devices, anything that makes the patient easier to use easier to use a therapy in the home. So for me, I guess the biggest opportunity was innovation for KORU, right? The one side, which pharma loves about us, is we have this amazing safety profile. You know, we've been on the market, we're regulatory approved, millions of safe home infusions. They love that because there's very little risk when they get into their clinical trials. However, to take it to full commercial use and for us to realize our full potential in the drug pipeline, we need to innovate on the platform. And that probably is the biggest area. And we're certainly well on our way on that front. But that was the single biggest, which I knew in diligence and still coming in is the biggest area for us.
You know, when you talk about innovation, I assume there's a few areas over there. So one is, I'm assuming, like, I don't know, maybe the cost to make your home infusion therapy solution, right? The manufacturing of it, and maybe to bring that down a little bit, right? And when you also talk innovation in terms of being able to do more with it, or a more convenient solution. I mean, it already is convenient. Maybe you can tell us a little about what you're looking at in that whole area.
Sure. So you mentioned one parameter of innovation, which is cost. And that certainly is one that we are well on our way with. We had outsourced manufacturing to a company that manufactures in Nicaragua, which lowered our cost dramatically in terms of overall labor costs going into the system. We also maintain, which is good, we have dual source of manufacturing. We also have manufacturing here in Chester, New York. So that side of it, I'm pretty comfortable with. The cost game never subsides. So we'll continue to look at opportunities to drive our costs down over time. On the innovation front, if you look at our platform today and what we hear from our caregivers that start patients on this platform, we have very high retention rates, right? A patient gets started on this therapy, 95+% of them stay on the therapy and stay with KORU. Patients do not switch once they get on our pump, which is fantastic. Having said that, if I look at the data today, only 20 to 30% of patients who could be starting on therapy in the home, which clinically there's data out there that says it's better for them because they don't get, like IV, a huge spike of immunoglobulin in their system that falls off over time. It's more of a steady rate because they're doing it once a week. If I look at cost to the healthcare system, there's so many reasons why patients should be utilizing more subcutaneous therapy. And one of the barriers to that is just make it simpler. So until Maj, you can put something, we can connect the pump, and put the needle in the insertion set in your stomach and press a button. You know, it's 3 steps to get this done. Today, we're about 30 steps. So we need to get the 30 steps down to 3, which is our initial product roadmap, is really looking at those areas and how to increase the patient convenience. And the second one is, just our next generation roadmap. And, that really works easily with a pre-filled device, which is where the market is headed, right? Don't have to draw any drug up out of a vial to a syringe system. I simply take a pre-filled device and put it right in the KORU system. So, those are some of the challenges and what I see as a pathway to, much broader market opportunity in IG. But beyond IG, IG increases our total market by, from 30 million to 300 million. But it's billions if you get into the new drug therapies that are above 10 ml that I think is an opportunity for KORU.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Well, first, thank you much for this invitation, and thank you, Linda, to stay here. So I'm today more comfortable, and when I listened the last conference call, the second quarter, so my main concern with your company was the expansion to Europe, because the health systems is not the same than US. No? So here it's private. In most of the Europe countries, they are not private, they are public. But at the end of your last conference calls, you talk about research and development right now, and you start to talk about that maybe you need to develop new devices or adapt the devices with electronical devices, no? To transfer from mechanical to electronical. And this is my main concern, and I'm so happy to listen these words. So you are in the work, no, from today to the future, to try to upgrade, no, the device, or maybe to make some M&A with other companies. Because I think the KRMD device from Intrapan, this is a really good device, and they have a really good approach here in Europe. And I appreciate that you want to introduce, or you want to go into electronical device. So can you explain more about that thing, please, Linda?
Yeah, so thank you. Many aspects to that question, and maybe I'll just start with expansion outside of the US. Obviously, today for us, being the device that's on label with all of the sub-Q IG therapies today is a huge win position for KORU. So that bodes us an opportunity to expand not only in Europe, but Japan, Canada, etc. So speaking to Europe specifically, I would say, first of all, we continue to lead, and you have to look at the market. It's broken down between mechanical and electronic pumps. So certainly in the UK and Nordics, we have a very good position, and our next markets that we are entering are Germany and France. Germany today is largely an electronic market. And I think that if we look at the overall cost position, which you reference, it's a public market, they're always interested in cost. We think that this is more of the fact that the market has not seen the KORU product. And we think that when we get in with a cost position that is a quarter of the cost position of an electronic pump with no differences in outcome. So we've gone head to head with Kane Chrono. We did it with the Apellis trials, and we saw patient preference for the KORU pump system. So I think that we'll see where the market goes over time. We believe that certainly from a cost position, we're more compelling than the electronic pumps. And I believe that the right application is an electromechanical system.
Yeah, right.
So I think the underlying issue with electronic pumps in this space is that when you're trying to get the quantity of volume that we're trying to get into the body, right? 50 mLs plus into the body. When you utilize an electronic pump, what tends to happen is it senses resistance in the body and it tries to push harder, which what we see when we test electronic pumps means you see pooling of the drug and issues at the site with pooling of the drug, because it can't infuse it into the body as quickly as you would like. KORU's patented position on our mechanical pump is when it sees resistance, it's a constant force system. It's going to let up a little bit until the body can absorb the liquid, and then it pushes faster. So I think if we can add electronics to our IP position with our mechanical pump, i.e., is the dose completed? How many mLs do I want to get into the body? Some basic data on what the patient did that we can upload to the cloud. I think that is the solution over time.
Okay, I remember that when I was researching your company for the first time, because I talked with Mash about your company, I decided I have to investigate it more, and I like to investigate in proximity. So I go in deep here in Spain to try to talk with different doctors, especially in US. I know that you know the PIDD Foundation here in Barcelona. So the main doctor, I try to talk with that. And is it interesting because that doctor is using not the Freedom, but a similar device than yours. It's a mechanical, and they use from 20s to 29, but then they stop to use mechanical and they start to use electronical, no? And they talk about because the flow, is it better, is it more constant, is it different? No? So I think this is good. I have a second question. So when you talk about, okay.
I'd love that doctor's name, by the way. I'll be over, hopefully, who knows with the COVID craziness, but trying to make a trip over to Europe in the next month. We'll see if that has to change.
I can send you the name if you want, yeah.
Wonderful.
And okay, in the second question, so you talk that, okay, you need to invest in R&D in this kind of more mechanical and electronical, but my question is, do you want to develop organically this R&D, or maybe you can expand and you can try to buy other company with that they have electronical device, for example, KORU, it's an Italian company that has this kind of device, no? So
the Kronos pump you're talking about. Yeah.
I think that the holding is Interpump. This is the pump that this doctor in Barcelona uses, no? But my question is are you open to buy companies, or you want to develop organically the new devices, or you want to mix both, right?
Yeah, it's probably a combination of both, utilizing our IP portfolio. But I think that whether, that's certainly a company that we have looked at with respect to the technology. But I would say absolutely we're open to both. And timing would say to develop a pump ourselves from scratch is a 5 to 7 year process, right? Even if you're best in the world at it. So definitely in licensing, whether that's parts of the system that we piece together with our IP, but definitely mergers and acquisitions have to be part of this, and partnerships.
Okay, great.
Thanks, that's awesome. I think you covered. I really wanted to understand that point on what you were going to do was for expansion and the product. Was it going to be organic or acquisition related? So that's good. We got that covered. Can you talk a little bit about, let's talk about the company now, because, there seemed to be a little confusion somewhere along the way here before you came along, where some of this segmentation of revenue was coming from. So when the company had a little bit of a miss in revenue, or was perceived miss, I think it was more because there was lack of understanding by the market. Maybe the company could have done a better job at segmenting where the revenue is coming from. So you have revenue that comes from helping companies go through trials, right? And you have obviously revenue you get from just selling your product in the market. So maybe talk about those two revenue sources, and if you have that information, and particularly the revenue coming from working with pharma companies, how is that relationship change over time? And is that going to be a bigger number, more volatile number moving forward? And I think that prior to new management, that wasn't as big as an emphasis. I don't know if that's true or an untrue statement, but so why don't you just break down your revenue and talk about some of those themes?
Okay, so I think first, one of the moves that the company made, which I think is a good thing, is we broke down our revenues in 3 areas, right? Domestic core, our core business being our Freedom pump, and our disposables, our high flow tubing and needle sets that go along with that. Okay, so the razor blade model. So we broke it down into domestic, international, and what we call novel therapies. So novel therapies would trace all of our engineering revenue we get, because a lot of the work we do with pharma is custom work. So we would look at revenues for that. And then we would also look at the clinical trial activity that we do. So I'll go back in time for just a moment to move ahead. So I think the issue that we had in the past is we didn't break it down by those 3 areas. What I heard coming in from every investor that I spoke with is increased transparency. So I'm going to talk about what we've begun to share and what we will continue to share as we move forward. So what happened last year is we had 2 things, right? First, we had a lot of increased buying in the channel. This is our immunoglobulin patient that we deal with today is an immune compromised patient. And with COVID happening, everybody loaded up the channel dramatically. At that time, the company did not have a good tracking of inventory. We now have, I can tell you, inventory by the week at our biggest distributor. So that is well under control. We also had Apellis, our final clinical trials, their phase 3 clinicals that we did, where they purchased millions of dollars worth of product to go into those trials. and we just were not transparent. So skip ahead a year, you had the one-time impact of COVID, and you had the one-time impact of the Apellis trials. We're going to be through all of that by Q4 of this year. I cannot wait till that happens, so I don't have to explain the one-time events. But then let's get back to the underlying fundamentals. We're in a subcutaneous immunoglobulin market, which today is about less than 20% overall penetrated. There's huge opportunities for upside. We see that market continue to come back every month. So it was a little bit soft through COVID as people were not being diagnosed, but we continue to see the market each quarter grow a little bit stronger, and we're seeing that as well in the numbers that we're reporting. So we feel good about that. For international, we feel good about the German partnership that we are progressing with, and so you'll hear me talk more about our expansion in Europe as we move forward and what we think that can do for us. In addition, you hear me talk, being more transparent also about the market, right? Where we started to buy market data that said what's going on in the overall marketplace, which we measure overall drug going into the market as a barometer. So how much sub-Q drug, how much IV drug is going into the overall market, and how do we track? We also look at pre-fills and the growth in pre-fills, which we think is a huge competitive advantage for KORU with our pump's ability to fit the pre-filled devices. So that's our core and international business. And then novel therapies. I think for the first time in the company's history, we talked about our pipeline, right? We talked about the fact that we've now mapped, since I've been on board, we mapped 70 new candidates in KORU's sweet spot. The market we own today is above 10 ml. We've mapped 70 candidates, which what you'll begin to see, and I talked about 5 signed agreements and 7 feasibility agreements where we're in earlier stage discussions. What I've heard back is, can you please track that by phase 1? Because phase 1, think of the revenues as being in the tens and hundreds of thousands, right? It's small scale samples. Can we use this pump? Is it feasible? Let's run stability trials with our drug. Phase 2, you're getting into we can use it. We need some customization. You're talking about hundreds of thousands. It's when they get to phase 3 and they begin their clinical trials that we really see, depending on the patient population, but you really start to see, more meaningful revenue, $500,000 to $1 million. And then of course the launch and the total addressable market. So what we're going to try and do without revealing the name of the drug is show you, where is that pipeline? Is it in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? What is the category of drug that they're in? And what is the total addressable market? If that drug were to make it to market, what is the total addressable market for KORU, and how does that expand our overall size? So I think you'll see from where we were at in the past, a lot of increased transparency. I'd invite any more feedback on, what you'd like us to be more transparent about. I get a lot of questions about, can we provide overall forecast to end of year guidance? I think you'll start to see that as I and the team get more comfortable with our pipeline and with our domestic business, and the market settles down a little bit, but we'll look to get there as well. So I think everything trending in the right direction. I cannot wait till Q3 is over, so I don't have to talk about all the inventory from last year and the Apellis trial, and really see the company be getting back to double-digit growth by the end of this year.
I appreciate so much, Linda, this new transparency, because any people that listen the conference call, they understand this new information. So you talk also about KPIs, so key performance indicators. You talk about sub-Q IG market data. You said that you can expect the number of total grams sold, and also you talk about end user data. My question is, do you expect to disclose this data by quarter, for example, or at the end year? So to make easy to try to estimate the revenue, so or not, this is internal data for the company.
Yeah, so I generally have talked about where we see the overall market growing, and it's not a one-to-one correlation. That's a difficult part. I've been in a lot of markets where we get however many scripts were on sub-Q versus IV, right? I would get that every month. In this marketplace, what we get is total units of drug going into the marketplace. So that's our proxy. But yes, I will continue to talk about what is the overall market and how does that compare to our financials. So you'll continue to see me talk through that because that's our first KPI, right? Are we growing at or above the market? That's the first measure we look at KORU. We also look at new patient starts as measured by our pump sales. We look at pipeline wins overall, and we look at gross margin. Those are our 4 key indicators that we look at to say, how is the company ultimately performing?
Also, in terms of the opportunity to move people from intravenous to sub-Q, with my last conversation with Grifols, they told me that they are increasing the selling of Xembify, which is sub-Q, and they stopped to selling intravenous immunoglobulin. So Grifols is doing to try to take market share of Hizentra in US, because I think Hizentra is 80% of the market share in the US, and Xembify right now is 5%. But I think sub-Q has higher price, so this is better margins for Grifols and CSL. So Grifols is in the right way to move from sub-Q. So this is good news, I think, for your company, right?
Yeah, we see if you look at even versus a year and a half ago, and of course, Xembify and Q-Quig launched right on the heels of COVID. So I think that was difficult for them. But we see now, more than 4 drugs in the market. So we see the opportunity. I actually just the last meeting I was in was looking at the market data, and we really see Xembify and Q-Quig beginning to grow in units phenomenally. So I was surprised to see the growth versus Hizentra. But yeah, we see overall the fact that sub-Q drugs are more expensive. So pharma companies are naturally incentivized to push their sub-Q portfolios more. We see that as a great indication of where we think the market will go over time. And anytime you have more than one player and Takeda and CSL were the broad market players for, the last 5 years, I think now you've got 4 players. I think the market will continue to expand.
Grifols is guiding for a recovery in the first quarter of next year. So they delayed from second half of this year to the first quarter of 2020. So
when you say recovery, just say more about that.
Yeah, to try to recover plasma volumes from last year, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about the competitive environment in the US in terms of companies with medical devices like Freedom? So can you talk about market share, about which company you compete and where are the strengths from which one? So I know that Freedom is the biggest one with the more market share, but I'm not sure about what are the rest of competitors there.
Yeah, so we have one major competitor company called EMED that has a pump and disposable system that we're just completing. So I'm not going to speak now, but you certainly will hear by the end of the year what our competitive value proposition is versus them. But we have about a 60 to 70% share. And Quim, one of the things that we just bought was we bought all of the data for how much we can't get patient script data because CSL blocks that because there's such a big part of the market. But we are getting how much drug goes into every single pharmacy of subcutaneous drug. And then we're going to map that. We're mapping that against our sales into those pharmacies to see what is our actual market share broadly in the US. But more importantly, it's a targeting tool. So we can now understand that at pharmacy A, we'll get it by volume, by pharmacy. So we'll know the pharmacies that are shipping out the most drug. And then we'll know as a proxy how many units of drug should equal how many units of KORU and what percentage share do we have. So we'll be able to target and say, pharmacy A, pharmacy B, pharmacy C are all KORU targets. That's competitive data and information that we know nobody else has in the marketplace. So we're excited to be able to mine that data. But EMED is our biggest competitor, and the biggest differentiator from KORU is that they are a follower. fast follower. Okay, so we participate in the clinical trials of our drug companies. So Xembify, Cutaquig, CSL, Grifols, Octapharma, Takeda. We're at the table with them, innovating for the future and getting into their drug trials. Apellis, right? EMED doesn't have an organization that does that. So what they do is once the drug is launched, they're a follower, and they'll go in as the second option for patients.
All the devices from EMED are mechanical, Linda?
Yes, yes, yeah. So that is the biggest competitor today that has an FDA approval. I know we've all heard about this company called Enable, which we don't see as a big competitor in our sub-Q IG market because the volume of drug and the variability of drug required, it would A, take too long to use a one needle port from an Enable device. B, the device would have to be so big to develop the volume of drug. I don't even know if it can stay on the body. So none of our IG manufacturers that we're aware of are actively working today with Enable on a large volume sub-Q. But we certainly know that 20 mLs and below, Enable, when they get their FDA approval, which I understand that is now delayed again. You know, these are not easy things to do. That would be the one that I look at on the horizon and say, you know, is the one that we think about the most, at least in that 10 to 20 ml market space.
Sounds good. So these are really good environments. So I have a data here that around the world, it seems that 500,000 people are diagnosed, but there are a number that there are 6 million people who have not yet diagnosed. So do you think that number is fair?
So you're talking about the overall diagnosed patient population with PIDD and CIDP?
Yeah, across the world. So today could be 6 million people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
in the US, I think it's 500,000 today that they are diagnosed, right?
Yeah. So diagnosed today overall in the US is about 300 plus thousand, growing at about 10% a year. So ex-US, you know, and globally, you're going to look at probably the number is in the millions. And obviously the undiagnosed population, the biggest thing that we see with COVID coming, and will this increase diagnosis, is immune compromised people are being looked at more than they ever have in the past. And this diagnosis is one that generally takes somewhere between 3 to 5 years for a patient to be diagnosed until they're, you know, they've exhausted every other possibility and they say, go get your immune system checked. We think that whole 3 to 5 lag will decrease dramatically because immune systems are being traced so much more than they were in a pre-COVID era. So I don't know, if I had my crystal ball, I would say, you know, our models look at overall patient diagnosis is where we start. Today, we're not modeling any broad increase in that patient diagnosed population, but it's certainly something we're tracking, and it would be a boost over time to the market.
And I think this number is related to primary, so PIDD, not secondary, right? So I think secondary, there are more disease and more possibilities to grow, but it's more, so it's more younger today, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so what you're talking about is secondary immune deficiencies, which are brought on by, you know, episodic events that occur. That obviously, again, with COVID is a huge opportunity for us. No easy way to track what is SID versus PIDD, but overall, I think what it bodes for KORU is just, again, what I've talked about, which is the overall market opportunity for home infusion and for PIDD. And, you know, these are low penetrated markets that continue to grow in the double-digit range. So we think that it bodes well for the company.
So you have a big opportunity to grow revenue, right? And then you have a plan to try to make something in cost. No, you talk about the first initiative is to make an outsourcing of manufacturing, and you can decrease the cost the cost of goods sold here from 2.5 to 3.5. This is the range. My question is, this better improvement in the manufacturing cost could be neutral because you are increasing your research and development. So can I expect for the future the cost to be flat, or can I expect the cost to be flat down?
So we're looking at that right now to say, obviously cost is one element of your gross margin. The other element of your gross margin is your mix of product. And then of course your pricing. That we believe that we can certainly drive our cost position down. I have to tell you that with COVID, I've never seen an environment, and I'm sure you've heard this from other people you speak to, costs just continue to escalate relative to a contracted supply chain globally. So that's a challenge, but we still believe we can drive our cost position down. I think there will be more pricing pressure in the marketplace than what we've seen in the past overall. And so we're still working on how does our cost decreases and what we think might be increasing pricing pressure, how does that all relate to our gross margin outlook? And I see it only going, listen, the gross margin profile, that's one of the other things that attracted me to the company. I'm like, okay, let me get this right. It's a company with a well-capitalized balance sheet, money to spend for what we need to do in the future. The gross margin profile is above 50%, which was phenomenal to me in a market where volume is only going to go one way. And then, I saw as an issue. I said to the board, why is the company making money, right? We should be investing back in innovation and building out our commercial. And that's exactly what the board is looking for, is an aggressive plan to really continue to grow that top line, which will drive the gross margin profile. But you would expect that overall our operating margins you'll begin to see the investment back in innovation and global expansion and commercial expansion and building out our pharma pipeline. You'll begin to see those investments roll in, Q3, Q4 into next year. But I don't think it's, this is a 5-year underwater. This is more like a year of concentrated investment as we build out the organization, and then you'll see the bottom, the operating margins come back as well.
Okay. You also talk about prices, that you are able to increase prices. Is it this increase related, but when I talking with Grifols, they said that the demand for immunoglobulins, they're so strong across US, Europe, Canada, Australia, so the prices are go up. So the supply is low because for COVID, but the prices are go up. This is the reason because you are also positive to increase prices for devices.
So pharmaceuticals are different than the devices, okay? So first, I would say that you saw pricing outside the US go up dramatically. Why? Because these companies were constrained relative overall to how much volume they had because of plasma shortages. So basically, they were going to supply the markets that gave them the highest prices. So what we saw were huge increases in pricing outside of the US. Of course, the US is always the highest price market in the world for pharmaceuticals or medical devices. And so we saw an increase overall in drug pricing. Devices, we're seeing a little bit more pressure overall in the marketplace relative to pricing. We did a price increase this past year at KORU, but I say if I look out at the next 3 to 5 years with our immunoglobulin, there's probably going to be a little bit of pricing pressure relative to what we see in the marketplace. And that's just a factor of, life cycle. The product's been around 7 or 8 years now. So we're going to build that into our model. And I think our gross margin profile will continue to grow because of what we've done on the cost. But I do see some increasing price pressures.
Okay, great. Mash.
Thanks, Quim. So I wanted to talk one last thing here on my side, Linda. I just want to take like maybe, I don't know how to say a worst case here. Let's take some scenarios here. One where international expansion continues to be a challenge and maybe it doesn't pan out to how you want it to pan out. So what does that mean for the company? For, you have a great opportunity in the US too. So that doesn't, take you off your path to still have a lot of opportunity in the US. So maybe talk about those two different opportunities again. And then, and while you're doing this, maybe talk about where you are financially right now, your revenues and, you know, your income, these things.
Yeah. So first, I would say, again, I'll come back to the U.S. marketplace is, you know, 3/4 of our revenues, more than 75+% of our revenues come from the U.S. market. The market pre-COVID was growing 15 to 20%. We see the market coming back to those areas. We see increasing penetration of sub-Q. So I see that as all being, you know, very positive here in the U.S. For Europe, I don't know that we're, you know, have incredible challenges there. I think that we'll see over time whether mechanical was with the price position wins versus electronic, but any sales for us in Germany and France, for example, those are brand new markets that we're getting into. So I only see our European business continuing to grow over time. As for our financials, obviously, I'm between quarters, so I can't really speak more than what I said on the call. What we're tracking now, given the one-time events that occurred last year, is we're tracking quarter-on-quarter revenues. We made and beat Q1. We made and beat Q2. Our quarter-on-quarter revenues continue to grow. I continue to feel very, very good about that. So a lot of work to do, you know, a lot of work to do around innovation. We got 3 510(k) approvals we expect to have by the end of this year. A lot of work to do on the innovation pipeline, on mergers, acquisitions, in licensing. So we're busy, but we feel good about how we're tracking against all of our key milestones at this point.
Okay.
Go ahead, Maj.
I was looking at, yeah, 1 second. Okay, so Marjan, are you there?
Yes.
Marjan? I think Marjan had a question.
Marjan, it's out. You have a question here in the chat.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the. Let me see. Well, yeah, I have a question here from someone from chat here, Linda. I'll read it as is. Oh, there, are you there, Marjan? I guess not. All right, so he has the constant flow versus constant pressure. Are there any general patient preferences, or is it completely dependent on the individual? If there are general preferences, are they geographic specific, US or Europe, or completely universal? I don't know. So maybe that's a.
Yeah. So we are actually doing human factor studies today that compare the electronic pump to, so the Chrono pump, for example, to our KORU pump. And, you know, when we have all that data, I'll be happy to discuss what we saw. Anecdotally, again, what we heard from Apellis in our trials is the Chrono pump is not intuitive. I've heard it from many healthcare professionals. It's not intuitive to program and how you do that. So I think we win on simplicity and ease of use. I think the US market is a mechanical pump market, and the European market to date has been an electronic pump market. But I think that's more of you know, we're going to make our big push into Europe, so we'll see where that goes over time. But once we get the results of our human factor study versus electronic, we'll be able to speak specifically to competitive differences with ourselves and electronic pumps.
Hey, Kim. Yeah, I think you had a question.
Okay, it is important, Linda, because I think this is the main concern of the investment community. So this difference about countries and mechanical and electronical. So one question today: what do you think is the main risk of your company? Do you think it's execution?
That's a great question. I don't. Listen, you know, the company scaling, what we just did, for example, innovation. I would say innovation is our biggest challenge right now, right? So what we just did is we just signed a partnership, maybe an opportunity for a press release. We just signed in a partnership. I just saw the note come in today with an external R&D house. So I can't hire R&D people fast enough to do what we need to do. So we're contracting that out to hire people to get that done. So I see that risk utilizing both external R&D houses and also in licensing and mergers and acquisitions. So that's probably the biggest one, though, that I see.
Okay. And I guess we should ask this question. Talk about how you get your product out into the market. I mean, you use distributors.
Yeah.
You've changed that distributor relationships not too long ago. And are there opportunities to pick up more distributors that you're don't have a relationship with right now?
Yeah. So how from a patient diagnosis, they get diagnosed at their immunologist, it's a specialty, or neurologist in the case of CIDP. They get a diagnosis there. That physician decides on the route of administration. Am I going to put this patient on IV or sub-Q? We're now in the process of KOL, building out our KOL group to understand what are the enablers and barriers to putting more patients on sub-Q. They then go to a specialty pharmacy, of which we have very broad relationships with all of these specialty pharmacies. They receive the KORU product from wholesalers that we ship to. We've just expanded. We have 5 that do about 60 to 70% of our business. The other 30% we do direct. They go into a specialty pharmacy, and that specialty pharmacy then decides whether or not they're going to recommend the KORU brand or the EMED brand. What we're doing now is just in the process of shoring up all of our contracts, our value-added services, our safety and efficacy profile, our competitive data set to say, here's why KORU. And again, 60 to 70% of the time we win that, but we're focused on those accounts. And we have a few that I see as upside where we have 10 to 20% share, where we're focusing on gaining all of their new starts is how we're trying to write our business.
Awesome. And I actually brought us to a question. Maybe you can't answer it yet. Is there efficacy data on your solution versus EMED solution already out there that we can reference, or is that something you're kind of compiling now?
We're compiling that now. It's
okay.
It's something that I know we'll have by the end of the year, but we're doing human factor studies on their pump versus ours. We're having it done by an external organization. So we'll have that data by the end of the year.
That'd be pretty awesome. Cool. Anything else, Kim?
No, I think it's great. So I repeat, I appreciate the new transparency and all data that Linda is providing. And I just like to know if someday Linda is traveling to Europe, to Italy. I like to know that, right?
Absolutely. I appreciate if Maj, you want to connect us. It sounds like you've got some great insights. I know a number of our investors have asked for doctors they could speak to, specialty pharmacists that they could speak to, and we've certainly turned them on to all of those in the US, but in Europe, I don't have as much exposure. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
One last time, any other questions out there? Get them out now if you have any.
I have a question. As the company is tracking Halozyme, or Halozyme in their NHAZE product development pipeline.
Yeah, certainly that is a the Halozyme story. I'm going to go back 15 to 20 years that they've been at this, right? So and great to see the success. They are a potential partner with us because we're going to go after all the same candidates, particularly large volume. So we're working on a couple of things, not directly with Halozyme, but with the candidates that they're working with relative to making the overall system easier to use. Because with Halozyme, you've got to do an injection of the Halozyme and then use the KORU pump and the drug associated with that. So is there any way we could make that process simpler for the end patient?
Thank you.
I think we're good. So that's awesome. Well, thank you, Linda, hey, you know, we're going to have you back here again sometime. We'd like you to get the presentation ready so you can maybe have just a presentation pitch here so we can put it on the little Grapevine. Good luck to everything you're doing. Really glad to have you on board. Just full disclosure, I do own the stock. I have for about 13, 14 years, so it's been a long time.
So you're doing okay with it then.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad ride.